I'm constantly hearing stories about people who jump on a cheap point-and-shoot or a bargain mirrorless body, only to end up with blurry photos, missed focus, and a whole lot of frustration when they finally need that one perfect shot. The regret is real, and it's the exact reason I hesitated before recommending the Canon EOS 90D. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. If you've ever stared at a blurry family photo and thought, I could have avoided this if I just bought something a bit more capable, then you'll understand why I spent a few extra minutes digging through forums, video tests, and real-world user experiences before hitting record. First off, the 90D sits in an interesting sweet spot between entry-level DSLRs and the higher-end prosumer models. The 32.5 megapixel APS-C sensor gives you the kind of resolution that lets you crop heavily without losing detail, a handy feature when you're shooting a wedding and the photographer missed the perfect framing. At the same time, the camera's 10 frames per second burst with no noticeable lag means you can actually capture fast action, like a kid's soccer game or a bird taking off, without the dreaded half-second pause that cheap bodies often impose. One of the biggest hesitations people have is whether a DSLR like this still makes sense in a world dominated by mirrorless systems. The answer, for many, comes down to lens ecosystem and autofocus confidence. Canon's EFS mount has been around for decades, which translates to an enormous library of lenses ranging from budget kits to professional L-series glass. If you already own a couple of EF lenses, the 90D lets you keep using them without a pricey adapter. That continuity alone can save you hundreds of dollars. And the 45-point all-cross-type AF system, with up to 27 points usable at f/8, feels surprisingly solid. In daylight, the camera tracks moving subjects with a level of certainty that makes me comfortable enough to let a child run around with it at a park. Even in low light, the dual-pixel CMOS AF does a respectable job, though you'll notice it's not as snappy as the newer mirrorless AF systems that use on-sensor phase detection. In practice, you'll still get reliable focus for most everyday scenarios, but if you're chasing fast-moving wildlife at dusk, you might find yourself hunting for that perfect focus point a bit more deliberately. Low-light performance is another common worry. The 90D sensor does a good job of keeping noise under control up to about ISO 3200, which is where I've found most indoor events sit comfortably. The DIGIC 8 processor helps keep the images clean and the colors natural, especially when you shoot in RAW and give the files a little post-processing love. That said, the camera doesn't have any in-body image stabilization, so you'll rely on lens-based stabilization or steady hands. If you're planning a lot of handheld video work in dim rooms, you'll either need a stabilized lens or a gimbal to avoid shaky footage. Speaking of video, the 90D offers 4K UHD at 30p and Full HD at 120p for slow motion. The 4K crop factor means you lose a bit of the sensor's width, effectively turning the field of view narrower, which can be a surprise if you're used to full-frame or even other APS-C cameras that use the whole sensor. In real life, that means you have to step back a little farther to get the same framing, or you have to plan your shots more tightly. The upside is that the 4K footage looks clean and the color profile is pleasant straight out of the camera, making it a decent choice for hobbyist vloggers who want to step up from a phone but don't need cinema-grade codecs. Now, let's talk about the day-to-day experience of actually using the 90D. The menu system is classic Canon, a bit layered, but once you get used to the hierarchy, you can dial in custom functions quickly. The top dial and rear will feel tactile, which is reassuring when you're shooting fast sequences. Battery life is impressive. I can usually get around 800 shots on a single charge, which is far more than most mirrorless competitors promise. That confidence means you can spend a whole day shooting events without worrying about finding a power outlet. The downside is the weight. At about 730 grams for the body alone, it's heavier than many mirrorless options. So if you're traveling light, that extra heft can become noticeable. Who should consider buying the EOS 90D? If you're a serious hobbyist who already has a collection of Canon EF lenses, or if you're a budding photographer who wants a camera that can grow with you, this is a solid investment. The high resolution, fast burst, and robust AF system give you room to experiment with everything from landscape to sports. It also doubles nicely as a webcam thanks to Canon's EOS Utility Webcam Beta software, which means you can repurpose the camera for work-from-home video calls without buying a separate cam. On the other hand, if you're a complete beginner who isn't ready to commit to lenses and you're mainly looking for point-and-shoot simplicity, a modern